this is its, that just takes, because of theirs.
Okay,
So you see how now it shows this.
So I can do this and I can kind of be directed.
Yeah, so now when you click back on that, that will show it the, what we're seeing here. Or yes, yeah. And then you
But I
just-
can minimize, I don't have to have that up there, I can
Yeah,
minimize
you can
this.
keep that, in it. So this is all it's showing on the live stream,
Okay.
so it's gonna be,
So we're streaming now.
it's gonna be-
Or like something.
yeah, so it's gonna be just us.
Okay,
It's us.
perfect.
That, so once
So
once
if
he's
he
ready, you
says it,
just,
would you mind just, are you gonna here?
yeah, you want me to stay here?
Would you want,
I can
whatever you, what,
And
well,
so
you're
he
gonna have
comes
to
and
get up to,
speak at some point, yeah.
yeah.
Which makes sense, so I mean, I'll probably speak, definitely, it's, I mean, if you just say that the mayor, like, actual comments, not pre-meeting, right?
Well, it's the finance committee, that's by your mind, so I think that's what that is gonna be for, but not really.
Interesting,
I'm not 100% certain, to be honest with you.
okay.
Yeah.
So
Like the same.
where it says sign, and one of the counselors has to sign off on it too.
Okay, great, thanks. They may know more about what they're supposed to sign, I just get them at the end.
Sylvia, is Mike Skyping in?
As far, when I sent out the agenda to the media, he was, but I haven't heard otherwise. The mayor was try to set him up.
Okay.
So I think that's maybe why he has it.
How are you, Paul?
You're right in your chair now, Mike.
Ira, thanks
Thank you,
for
Ira.
the meeting the other night.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I thought it was.
Thank you.
Well, it was,
Is tomorrow
I
okay?
guess, information, but
Yeah.
it was like, oh my God.
Yeah. Thank you, I appreciate all your input and all your work. Oh, I didn't say.
I know, you warned me the first time.
So at school, Brent has got these folders, these folded chairs and their casters, and they're made such a way so that when you sit back, it like perfectly molds the chair back. And I'm looking at these going,
Is that where you wanted
trade in.
So Councillor Kelly, you can conduct the finance meeting, or Councillor Moore on his behalf?
Yeah, I think.
Thought, since I'm remote today, maybe Councilor Moore would be willing to lead the proceedings.
So just to let the public know, we'll begin with a half-hour approximately finance committee meeting. And then at 5 o'clock, we begin with our work session and have some discussion presumably over, I think many of you are accepted our invitation with regard to Cogan Avenue. There will also be some public comment period just at the beginning of the council meeting at 5:30 as well. Okay.
Okay, I'll call the meeting of the Finance and Budget Committee for January 16th, 2020 to order. Roll call.
Councilor Kelly,
Here?
Councilor Moore,
Here.
Mayor Reed,
Present.
Councilor Barbell,
Here.
Councilor Gibbs,
Here.
Councilor DeDominicis.
Here?
Well, Mike, feel free to chime in if I miss something.
Okay, Jeff. So far, so good.
Okay, we have up on the screen today is the 5 and 10-year plan for the city finances. I know you probably can't see them all
Yeah,
that
we
well,
can
but
cut those
Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you.
Uh, the thing I wanna point out most clearly is that our projections have been, for the last 2 years, have been very accurate. So I would say that, you know, you could hang your hat on some of these projections, and it looks like for the next couple of years, we'll have to keep things really close, but that it gets better as time goes on. Well, I can't see those numbers either, but in any event, we had a very good budget year this year. And I just wanted to comment at this time, we've been starting using that OpenGov program that we had come out with. And you know, Counselor Kelly and myself individually and together have been started, you know, getting into these numbers. And it's really helpful, and I think some of the other council members are starting to get in there too. Those numbers are very accurate. So we can see where we've been, and these numbers give us a roadmap to where we wanna go. And I think Counselor Kelly will agree that if we can stay on track here, we'll become very solvent in the future and be able to meet all our obligations.
Yes, I do agree with that, Jeff. And I just wanted to point out that if you look at the 10-year plan on the screen and pay attention today to the 2019 column, you could see, as Jeff mentioned, what we targeted back in May of 2019, we of course passed on to the mayor so that he could build his budget for 2020, and our 2019 projections were just almost spot on. We predicted a $500,000 fund balance at the end of the year, and we are very, very close to that. 2019 numbers aren't quite finalized yet, but when they are, I think we'll discover that we're very, very close to that $500,000 surplus that we were striving for. And it speaks very highly to the fiscal discipline of not only the city council and mayor, but all of our department heads who are endeavoring every single day to make things work in a way that is cost effective. So I couldn't be happier about the results that I'm seeing so far this year for 2019. And you'll also notice on that 2019 column on the 10-year plan, you'll notice that the revenue and expense projections were also very close. So that speaks even more highly to the fiscal discipline that we're observing here in the city. So just couldn't be happier with what I see, and I think the taxpayers will be pleased also when they see our fiscal discipline. That's about all I have to say about that. I guess the only other thing would be the way that OpenGov has helped me personally to understand city finances, and I was able to go in to OpenGov and compare the 2019 results with our 2019 projections in the 10-year plan. It made me think, well, gee, wouldn't it be great if we could somehow put the 10-year plan in with OpenGov so you can see them both at the same time? But that's a discussion for further down the line, I guess. But that concludes my remarks.
I've got a couple of observations. First of all, the tax rate, notice that the mill rate per thousand of property value has actually gone down by 4.5% this year. We turned the property tax rate back to what it was in the budget that was proposed back in 2016, and now we're looking at 2020 budget. So that's some progress, and at the same time, as you said, we're building up a surplus, about a $500,000 surplus this year that's translating into a fund balance that has gone from in the red back in 2016, 2017, now to about a $1.3 million surplus. And You know, fund balance is kind of a complicated way of saying how much money we have in the bank for a rainy day. If all of a sudden we had, since we're self-insured for medical, all of a sudden if we had a couple of really big medical claims, all kinds of things could go wrong to the tune of $1 million in a $60 million city. So looks like $1.3 million works out to about 3 weeks, 2 weeks of money in the bank. Your financial advisor would tell you you're far better off by having a couple of months of savings in the bank than a couple of weeks, but it's a lot better off than having nothing at all in the bank, like how many of you started just a few years ago in your observations of this. But we have to maintain diligence. You can see in these projections that 2021, we're still gonna have to come up with more than $500,000 of permanent savings. 2022, another $250,000, another $250,000 in 2023, and 2024 of permanent savings each year, just to kind of keep this trend of savings and building up to a more fiscally prudent fiscal balance going. And then in 2025, just off to the very right, even a little bit in 2024, since our expenses, which are rising at 3.15% every year, and our revenue just isn't able to keep up with that, we are starting to go slightly into the red again and draw down on that fund balance 4 years from now. So we're making great progress, but I don't think any of us believe that our work is already finished.
Can you explain to me what a property tax mill rate means?
The mill rate is amount of property taxes you pay per $1,000. Currently, our mill rate is $11.65 for the upcoming year per $1,000, which works out to be about 1.165% of your property value. So there's two ways of looking at it, either a percentage or a mill rate. To give you, put that in perspective, that $11.65 per thousand, the school district is about twice that. They're around $23, $24 per thousand, and the county is just over half that, about $6 per thousand. So when people see their tax bills, there's three bills they're looking at really. The city tax rate about $11.65, the school tax rate of about 24, and then the county tax rate of about 6. So the city represents about 35% or so of their tax bill, and our share is going down as we're trying to be fiscally prudent. And it's difficult though if other shares are starting to go up at the same time as we're going down, because the taxpayers say, well, yeah, but the check I wrote out at the end of the year isn't really going down, but the city portion is.
So when homes were assessed by the county this past year, how did that affect this in any way?
Some went up, some houses went up, probably some people in the audience today. My house went up, some stayed about the same. The overall increase in property valuations with that revaluation, once the county did the assessment, you can actually see represents an increase in property tax base of 3.87%. So on average, a house became more valuable by 3.87% since they were last assessed years ago. But then the property tax rate went down by 4.5%. So the average taxpayer should see a decline in the city portion of their taxes. Tax value of the house went up, but the tax rate went down more than to compensate for that.
Okay.
So then when you see, say, a school district tax, or school district rate go up by 2%, and piled on to a 3.87% in the property tax value, the people are gonna have to pay the sum of those, 3.87 plus 2% or so school tax rate, mill rate increase. So that's gonna be about a 5 or 6% increase in the check they'll write to the school portion of the taxes. But the city portion itself actually went down. And I don't think, in my observations, it's ever gone down. So normally taxes only go up.
Right.
But we're actually trying to bring them down at the same time as building up the fund balance, and try and maintain the services and build the roads that we were trying to do as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, and at 3.87% factored into the city's tax cap this year. That is why, in order to meet the state mandated tax cap, we actually had to lower the tax rate. So that's part of the reason why our taxpayers will benefit from lower taxes this year.
think that that's consistent with the philosophy of the council, I believe, of trying to keep living in the city of Plattsburgh as affordable as possible. I mean, it's an equity issue. It's a concern for those on fixed income where they don't have their annual salary going up every year. They're locked to a certain pension or social security that only goes up slowly. They don't get raises at work anymore.
Mhm.
So we can ill afford to have our property tax bill keep going up and up and up. Those individuals that are kind of locked in. We don't want anybody to be leaving the city of Plattsburgh for affordability reasons.
Well, and that's where OpenGov has been very helpful, like, the things that Councilor Kelly and I looked at kind of verified the decisions that we made in the past year, that for next year's budget. It pretty much shows that we are on the right track on everything that we're doing. So, you know, it's a commentary on, you know, all these city departments, the council, mayor, everyone did a great job. And one thing that Council Kelly and I were surprised to see, like, our revenues are not flat or rising. Our revenues overall are falling, but we have made it work out because we've lowered our expenses by an even greater amount. I mean, it's hard to do because we're not growing.
Right.
So we've done a great job, everyone has done a great job with the budget to make it acceptable.
Mhm.
You know, we have what we have, and there's nothing extra. But I just wanted to say that everyone did a great job on that. And everybody, I hope, will be pleased when they see our tax rate, and the taxes they have to pay for the city, go down. For the most part. Some, you know, some assessments were, I was above the average, so I'll probably pay a little more, some people will pay a little less, but, you know, that's how it shook out.
Council, would you like to, or have me show the public where they can find OpenGov on our website, so people can explore it for themselves? I can get it if you like.
Yes, and that's the beauty of that. Anybody will be able to go in there and look at these figures, and they all have charts. So, you know, if you're wondering if something's going up, something's going down, it's very clear, it looks really good. You don't have to spend a lot of time thinking your way through it. It's very visual, so it's easy for everyone to understand. And everybody's gonna have access to this to see what we see. You won't have to ask somebody, or get some complex explanation, it's gonna be right there in full color.
Is that the homepage for Plattsburgh, City of Plattsburgh, Mayor?
Yeah.
It's right,
Okay.
right on the list, yeah, right there, yeah.
So right off to the left-hand side in the box on the left-hand side, right at the bottom, I'm opening up OpenGov. Here's the view of the presentation. Yeah, so you go to the bottom of the page it takes you to, and then you can look for yourself at all the various dashboards, and you can go in and look at, for instance, I'm at general fund revenue by year, and I can go from 2016, 2017, 2018. Look at expenses, click on the various expenses, and go into even more detail from there. Something the council looks at often is overtime by department. So I can look at various overtime categories. This department here is public safety. Below that is home and community, etc., transportation. Fire department, how they're doing so far in the year. They're a little bit in the red. Police departments so far in the black a little bit, etc. So there's all kinds of information the public can get right for themselves at their leisure from home to really access these budget details we're talking about today. We haven't got the 5 and 10 year plan in here yet. We're trying to still figure out a way to put that information. This is all the current budget figures up to today.
Yeah, that's one of the nice features of this, it's right up to date. You're not looking at last year's numbers, or 6 months ago's numbers, you're looking at right up to date figures. So, that'd be a big plus for everyone. Okay. Well, we don't have the Chamberlain with us tonight, so I guess that would, if there are any additional questions from the council, we would entertain them. Okay, if not, we have agenda items to be brought forward from the departments to be approved by the committee and recommended to the council. We have 1 and 2, I guess, there's only, Mike, you wanna make a motion to move those to the agenda?
Yes, I'll make that motion, Jeff.
All second. All in favor? I guess we're supposed to do a
Aye.
roll call, I guess.
Counselor Kelly,
Yeah.
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes?
Okay, is there any old business for the finance committee? Is there any new business for the finance committee? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So,
I'll second.
I'll make that motion, Jeff.
Okay. And I'll second.
Counselor Kelly,
Yeah.
Yes.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Mary,
yes. So with the finance committee complete, we can yield the remaining time for our work session. Would you like to solicit public comment from Cogan Avenue or discuss Cogan Avenue? I'll just give the floor to you all.
Yeah, if it, oh,
Please.
okay, so, yeah, I would like to inform the council, and even though I've emailed everybody on the council and, to keep everybody updated about the, homes that I visited and the people that I spoke to, I wanted to have this opportunity, why don't I just inform everybody who's here what the process has been this week. So we made a decision as a council to put the water line and reconstruction project back on the agenda this year, and this came out from complaints that were brought to us, or brought to me specifically, from people in my ward about the general condition of the street, and there's a terrible water drainage problem on Cogan Avenue. So there were several concerns brought to me, and there was something in Speak Out about it. I think I saw something in a letter to the editor. People living on Cogan Avenue clamoring for a solution. So Andrew and the Public Works, and the mayor, they put together a plan and solicited an engineering company to put together a plan for us. The finances were approved last year, 2019, for something for this year. So we had a meeting last week, our infrastructure meeting, Councilor Moore and I, and Andrew brought to us and the council the 3 options that were up on the table for how this would look. And we did a presentation during the council so that everybody could see what the options were and explain them to us. So I made the decision to go out on Saturday and knock on the doors of the people who live in that section of Cogan that are going to be impacted. And where I couldn't reach people, I left business cards with a note on the back for people to contact me. And so I'll just share the results with everyone here of who, how many people I spoke to and what the feedback was. So there are 30 possible there are 30 homes that I visited, and of the 30, 17 homes contacted me with their feedback. Of those 17 homes, 13 people were highly in favor of only option 1, which is just having the curb and then the paint stripes on the side, inside the street, set aside for wheelchair access and pedestrian access. Because option 2 and option 3, which would require sidewalks, are going to take up anywhere up to about 15 feet worth of frontage of a home to put in sidewalk. So, so other people, their feedback was mostly, well, definitely want a sidewalk, or put sidewalk on both places, both sides of the street. And then there were some others who were hoping to ditch the project altogether. So, well, let's not do anything at all, and I don't find that that's an option that we should entertain, because the street is in very bad shape. And anybody who lives in that section knows. So for full transparency, any conversation I had with anybody in my ward, I was very clear about what my personal recommendation was to the council. After I spoke to a number of the people there, I felt that curb only with the stripes to allow for pedestrian and ADA compliance are going to be the least intrusive into people's property. Sidewalk, I suppose, would be ideal for safety, but then if we decided to do on just that odd, what I call the odd side of the street, many of those homes are so close to the street that sidewalk on that side of the street is going to put pedestrian traffic, for some people, almost immediately right outside their window. And that is a huge shift for people who've been living there for a long time and have a small piece of property. And then I also was contacted by some elderly people in that strip who insisted that they don't want sidewalks because then they'll be forced to maintain them. They'll have to remove the snow, they'll have to remove the ice. It's not part of their long-term retirement plan, and they objected, and I understand that. Sidewalks would be ultimately more safe. People would be off the road, and they would be traveling on a sidewalk. But the impact to the homes is the part where I feel would be a pretty large detriment to the way people are living. Because it isn't just the sidewalk that goes in the 15 feet of the front yard, but it's also 15 feet of the driveway. So the people I spoke to who object to having just the curb, their largest objection is that it would eliminate parking on the street. There'd be no more parking on that section of Cogan that is impacted by the project. And so the largest concerns were, well, what's going to happen, you know, if I have more people in my house than I have driveway access for them, where am I going to park? And my response was, it is definitely going to be a shift in terms of how you manage the number of vehicles. And I also did say to one woman that I spoke to, or it might have been by email, we tried to come up with the one size fits most, because not everybody on that street isn't going to be happy with, you know, there's going to be consensus, oh yes, everybody wants this one thing. And so we have to make those decisions as a council based on the information and based on the feedback. And I understand there are going to be objections no matter what we do. So my recommendation, and like I said, I made this very clear to everybody that I spoke to so that there would be transparency. My recommendation is that we put curbs only, and that there is paint striping on the street for pedestrian and ADA compliance. And I realize that that will impact people who are used to parking on the street, but it means that there will have to be a shift in the way people, you know, how they plan their parking, I guess is how I would say that. But I'd welcome any feedback from anybody else on the council, because I realize I'm just one person. Jeff, you sit on infrastructure with me, and what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, we are, at the very least, we have to represent the needs of the city. You know, if it was up to me, I would pull the sidewalk out from in front of my house and plant a flower bed, but it does not fit the needs of the city versus my personal needs. So I agree with you, we need to have something. There has to be pedestrian access.
There has to be.
What, you know, there is no, that is not an option that we can not do. So I agree with you that, you know, going in the least obtrusive way is probably the best way forward. There is no perfect solution.
There is no perfect solution.
So in any event, someone will be unhappy with what happens, but we do live in a city and there has to be access.
So another conversation I had with a homeowner was, well, why are we putting the stripes on the road now and in this chunk? Because the rest of the city isn't that way? Why isn't the whole city being designed this way? And my response to that person was, new projects have to be ADA compliant. Right, is that true, Andrew? Okay. New projects have to be ADA compliant. And so her question was, well, then are other parts of the city out of ADA compliance? And I said, yes. And, you know, in an ideal situation, we would go through and every single neighborhood in the city would be ADA compliant. And what we're trying to do as a city is address those projects and those concerns as we complete them. In a perfect world, we'd have the money to go through and take care of everything, but we don't. And the West End footprint, I think, has always been pedestrian, no sidewalks. Cogan is unique. Like Prospect, it is that one shot between Cornelia and Ruger, and traffic does go quickly. So we can't solve all the problems. We're looking at this project as it exists, and I feel that my recommendation is the best solution at this point. But
What's your
again, I'd be open to what others have to say.
Well, and I know for anyone who wasn't here at the last meeting, the design engineer would not tackle, you could not put a walkway on just one side of the street. You would not design that because it was not compliant.
Because
So that
pedestrians
was
have to
not an
walk
option.
facing traffic, and if we don't have access for both sides of the street, then that's a liability for the city. The engineer will not put his or her name on a project that leaves that company open for lawsuit, and it's a huge liability for the city. And these are the other things that we have to consider as counselors, where, yes, I'm a resident in the ward, but I also represent the city, and I have to represent the city's interests and be very, very mindful that we have to make sure we are not open to liability, because lawsuits cost the residents money. It's not like it costs the city money, it costs all of us money, and so we have to think about that too. Andrew, is there anything I missed?
Did everything.
Okay,
So
thank
you
you.
want just curbs, but then people walking on the street, essentially.
Yes, and there would be a lane painted in for pedestrian and ADA compliance.
I mean, I like sidewalks, that's me. I can understand why people don't want them.
Oh, I do
If
too.
they don't, I do know this, where I walk my dog in my ward, it's down, Nichols Avenue, right, is that right? Kellogg Court, Cedar Lane, that area. Nichols Avenue is the only one with a sidewalk, and it only has it on one side. And walking down there is not all that fun, but it's a residential area, people don't drive through it fast. When people come up behind me in their cars, you can hear them, they, go pretty slow. And I will note that on Nichols Avenue, where they have the sidewalks, a lot of cars are parked across the sidewalk. Even if they could pull forward enough to get two cars there, they tend to leave enough room and block the sidewalk, probably because no one cares. And I will note that even when I walk down Nichols Avenue, I tend not to walk on the sidewalk there because it's blocked a lot. There's even hedges at the end of it growing over the sidewalk. Personally, I like sidewalks. I think when people are walking safely through their neighborhoods, it presents more of a community. When people walk dogs around their neighborhoods, the communities are often safer because people don't want to break into houses when there's a lot of people out on the street walking around with some witnesses and stuff like that. So I like walkable neighborhoods. I wouldn't live in one that didn't have one, and I wish the sidewalks on my road were wider. But to put a sidewalk on there would require changing the entire dynamic of the neighborhood. And you wouldn't just do it for that one section of Cogan Avenue. It'd be brought into a whole comprehensive plan. And it would have to start with Cogan Avenue and then go to the entire, what do you call that, the West End over there? And if people don't want it, I'm not gonna press it. It's more expensive. I don't like the idea of people walking on the street, even if there's a line that doesn't really protect them. I do think that the street should only be 10 feet wide. You make them wider, people start going faster, especially if it's a straight shot from Cornelia to Ruger. I do think there should be trees around it. If there's more, if the road feels more congested, it just naturally lends to people driving slower, which is honestly what those streets are named. Kellogg Court, Cedar Lane, Nichols Avenue do. They're roads that you wouldn't naturally drive fast down. Cogan Avenue, I don't live near there, I don't walk around it. But it seems more like a street that people might naturally drive fast down. My street, Saley Avenue, people naturally drive very fast down it because it's a straight shot from pretty much downtown to the northern end of the city. And it's straight. If there weren't stop signs, I'm sure people would go 70 miles per hour down it.
Yeah, Cogan is that way. People do drive too fast. They do. They really fly down Cogan, and I recognize that. And I'm glad you actually brought up a point that I had forgotten to mention, that if sidewalks go through and we know about the 15 feet, that also means you can't park your car over the sidewalk. And that would be something to put into consideration too. Liz, I do have a question that I couldn't answer today because somebody had asked, and the section of Cogan where Domino's Pizza is located, that little business park right there, what's gonna happen there if we went with just curbs and the paint strips there? What would happen to that area?
So the Domino's Plaza, the striping would come up to just before the Domino's Plaza and cross the street and go to the other side. And there's enough room to put sidewalk between the parking of the Aaron's Plaza and the edge of the road. So basically the two lanes would come together on the east side of the road and come up to Cornelia Street. So nobody would be losing any parking for the Domino's Plaza or the Aaron's
Okay.
Plaza.
I couldn't remember, and a resident asked me and I couldn't answer the question. Okay.
And there wouldn't be any parking on the road?
No.
So,
Parking would be prohibited.
I mean, the thing I wrote, or I sent, that it's, clear that walking is safer if there's parking in between the roadway and where people are walking. Obviously, it creates a steel sort of barrier if there's cars parked there. But then again, like I said, if we don't want to transform the entire area, might as well keep it similar to how it is now. And it doesn't seem, I missed if anyone talked here today.
No, we haven't opened it up for public comment yet.
Oh.
So right now we're in the discussion phase so that the public can see what the conversation is.
Perfect, well, yeah, and if, I haven't heard people complain about how it is now there, so maybe, and if they want it there, like I said, I'm not gonna fight for it. If I lived there, I'd probably want a sidewalk.
And if the comprehensive plan decided that the west end needed sidewalks, those could be added later.
Yes, so basically the way that this would be designed, if you went with option one, you could later on go through and add sidewalk. Because we do own a much wider right of way than what the road takes up. We could go back later on and add sidewalks.
And I explained that to a resident I spoke to today. Nothing prohibits us, because we own that property anyway, nothing prohibits us from putting sidewalks in at a later date if we decide we have this comprehensive plan. So we're looking for solving this right now. Anybody else had anything? All right.
I think trees are an issue as well.
Well, I did tell everybody that there would be, anywhere where trees were located near their property, they would be removed, and there would be a landscaping plan to go through and replace anything, so I was also clear about that as well.
I think
And
we need to,
Actually,
sorry,
some people I spoke to were very happy about the idea that their trees would be.
There was actually discussion of having several different types of trees and maybe.
And several residents I spoke to were very happy about trees being removed from that section that's very close to the project area.
Yes.
So I was very clear about that as well.
Yeah, I think if trees are taken out, we should plant new ones, and I think a lot of places throughout the city.
Yeah, that's part of the
I've
landscaping
been talking to an
plan.
arborist, and there's a lot of good things we could do with planting trees around the city, but that's not really a debate for today.
Thank you.
Okay.
Was it your preference to open it up for public discussion? There was also a public comment period during the meeting itself, and since
Well, the
this
public
isn't
is
actually on
here.
the agenda as a resolution item.
I'm
well,
sorry?
This item isn't actually on the
Right.
agenda tonight. It'd probably be better to take any public comment before the meeting began, save people have to wait to the very end of the meeting.
I think that'd be wise, we have a small agenda today, so.
Is there going to be a resolution on the agenda for a recommendation, or how is this going to work
No,
now?
all this is to give advice to the engineers for how they can go and plan it out. The next step, once the engineer comes up with a plan, there'll be an actual budget associated with it, which you would then subsequently approve.
Okay, okay,
So this is an advisory for the engineers right now.
okay. So do we want to open it up
Yes.
for public comment right now before
We'd
the
like to,
5:30? Do
Yes,
you want me to
we
be the
want to make sure.
timekeeper? Okay, you want the sign-in to be in front of my desk here? No, I'm gonna use my phone.
Here's my phone, doesn't matter.
They can sign it right here if anybody would like to come and speak. She's waiting to hear you.
Please come on up. Come right up. You can sign it afterwards. Oh, great.
I have to apologize, I'm a little infirmed. I have been for a while. My name is Thomas O'Keefe. I live at 48 Cogan Avenue. I moved to this city 10 years ago, roughly 9 years ago. I moved here because I lived here prior. I moved here because I liked the fire department. I liked the police department. I liked the MLD. I used to be able to walk into the mayor's office, Carlton Rennell, and discuss a problem with them I want. I had heard various things about this body, and I am stunned to find out that they're true. It's almost like a star chamber in here. You can't ask questions when things are being discussed. I've kind of stepped back because I've spent my life in U.S. Customs defending America for 35 years, and as an advocate for 30 years as a union president, and it wasn't my show, the RDI, all this other stuff. But I got to tell you, I don't even know you. You didn't talk to me, and I live on Cogan Avenue. And I've had drainage problems on Cogan Avenue and Park Avenue that date to when I first moved there. So apparently, I guess the way this works is if I get the right council person in and they feel like taking my water, I win. I asked for a crosswalk between Ruger and Cogan because I go to the field house and I wanted to walk. You know what I was told? We don't want to slow the traffic down. You know, and you're telling me about liability? Are we concerned on other streets about liability down in the end of Brinkerhoff or Couch? Are we concerned about how far the cars are parked there? I am absolutely stunned and offended as a citizen of a democracy that this has happened without talking to people on the entire street. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Ashamed of yourselves. I moved here and made an investment for a reason. And before you jump the gun and say, you haven't tried to talk to me, sir, Your Honor, I wrote you, I know I'm not supposed to address you, God forbid. I wrote you an email once with a concern and left you a voice message and it went unreturned. And sir, I'm a voter and I'm a Democrat and I'm insulted. And I wanted to look you in the eye, all of you, and tell me, where do I go now? Realtor? Lawyer? What? Because this is nonsense. I notice Domino's is protected and Aaron's is protected, but if somebody wants to have an event, they're not protected. And they want to have their family park on the street. Where are they going to park? Downtown at the bank? Talk to the people that live there. Like I used to say in customs, don't let me slow you down with facts and common sense, but talk to the people that live there. I'm glad to hear all this input. I'm glad. Maybe I can comment on your street and we can figure out how to live in a city harmoniously. I made a significant investment. I ask you now to hit the brakes on this. Don't do what you always do, rush to judgment, spend money that in 5 years you made a very good point, it's gonna come all the way down Cogan. You better be looking, why don't I get a sidewalk? And I'm fully cognizant that you can't please everybody. I negotiated 3 national agreements for 40,000 people. This is not my first time in the deep end of the pool. You people better get a grip on this city, because you're not going to lose them for finances. You're going to lose people like me, because I don't know where you got the copy for this. What was it, Russia, the Politburo? What is with this? You can't talk. I can't even talk to my council person. That's all I have to say, and I hope you think about what you do before you do it, and I don't get an invitation in the paper the day of to come down here.
What do you want to see happen with Cogan Avenue?
This isn't question and answer, this is public comment.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Harry Durgan. I live at 39 Cogan Avenue. We moved into the west end of the city of Plattsburgh in 1990. We bought Carlton Rail's house. The improvements we've done are massive, made it all modern. Years ago, I went to the city planning board or the building inspector's office for a sidewalk. That sidewalk is in excess of the 15 feet that you guys may be taking from us. I was told at the time, that one in charge down at the city of Plattsburgh, that they have the right of way is 15 feet. I know that. That was for fixing things, I was told, and repairing things. Our street has been in need of repair for many, many years. Now, Sandra was done, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 10. I can't really, but they don't have any sidewalks on their street. That runs parallel to our street on Cogan. Now, if you're talking about taking and making curbing on both sides and making a pedestrian lane, I talked to you the other day when you stopped at our house, you said they were gonna do curbing in the pedestrian lane. You didn't tell me that there wasn't gonna be any parking. Now, another thing, if you look on your records, it's 1990 since we moved in there, including Halloween night. No children have been hurt by cars being hit on the side of the road. There's been more accidents of people on their feet and bicycles and cars, Robin will contest to that, because of the pothole problems. People hitting those potholes and blowing out a tire, getting out of a line. I mean, I brought my car down there before to Robin, good many times. And I was told, you can actually sue the city of Plattsburgh because of the fact that that should have been repaired. I call up now and again and I have them repair those potholes. I spoke to the mayor on Monday with the mayor. He kind of blew it off. I said, what about the sidewalk on Cogan Avenue? What about the redoing of Cogan Avenue? I'm a firm believer that we should fix the street the way it is. I know there's new compliances supposed to be out there, but you can't take a family as big as ours. Any given event, we have 10 to 15 vehicles that come to our house. They park on both sides of the road. Nobody's gotten hit, nobody's gotten hurt. Now, if you were to do a sidewalks, that's gonna take away, and obviously you got it worked out and you wanna do it on the odd side of the street, which is our side, 9. I'm not in favor of that much land being taken, but you're shoving something that says we either have to do this, this, or this. Those are your only options. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that's not fair to the people that live on that West End. It's not fair. We've been trying to get this street redone many, many, many years. And it seems like it's always on the back burner or put off or somebody complains about it and we shift it back to where it was before. So it's taken off the table where we have money that goes someplace else. But all those years, that road should have been fixed. And it should have been fixed before the new rules and regulations out. Now, because they're out now, we have to comply with them. Now, I don't know how fair that is. I don't think it's fair. I mean, our property value is actually going to be decreased because of what we have in our front lawn. And it is true, the closer you come to those sidewalks, if you do a phase 2 or a phase 3, it's going to put people closer to your homes. But I just want to reiterate that I have not heard or seen anybody being hit walking on either side of that street. I've walked it with my wife, my daughter, my grandkids, many years. We gotta maintain, all I want to do is maintain what we have there. You want to fix your sewers, you want to fix your water lines, your sanitation lines, that's beautiful. It works. What we have works. We don't want change on our end of the street, and most of the people that are on this end of that street will attest to the fact. You don't want change, but when you come up with 3 things, either get burnt, stabbed, or shot, you got to pick the best of one. That's ridiculous. And we got to come up with a solution here, guys. Now, you're all council members, you're all ward members, voted for you. I mean, I don't know how many Ward 3 members have been on my porch and preached to me that they're going to do this, they're going to do that, they're going to do this, and there's none of them that have come through with their promises. None of them. We got to get things done. We got to take it and we got to work with it. But again, I wanted to tell you, safety for kids, safety for walkers. I'm not saying that tomorrow, God forbid, somebody doesn't get hit. But in the 30 years I've been there, I've not had one person hit on that end of that street. And that's even after a hockey game or Halloween.
Mr. Durgan, I'm sorry, your phone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Joan Jansen, and I live at 29 Cogan, which is pretty much smack dab in the middle of the street. It's on the east side, which is where the sidewalk is proposed to go. I have to agree with my neighbor, Mr. Durgan, that the council came up with 3 plans and said, this is it, you can choose A, B, or C. All of a sudden, it appears that Cogan is being discussed, and the people who made the point that this has been on the agenda for a long time are correct. I sent a letter to Clyde Rabideau that had bold headlines on it that said, "Can the curbs, Clyde?" Because I didn't want curbs back then, and I don't want them now. I agree, we have a problem with potholes. The city has a problem with potholes. Unless we're going to change our climate, which may be in the process of, and maybe getting worse instead of better, we're going to continue to have those kinds of problems. I felt that there were other streets that needed more attention than Cogan did, but it has gotten to the point where it's a pretty well beat up street, and I agree, I would like to see it repaved. Do I want to see curbs? Not particularly, in part because when I have visitors, I put my car out on the street, and if 2 tires are on my front lawn, I don't care. If my neighbor needs some extra space, he's welcome to park in front of my house. That's fine with me. I don't have that great a lawn in the first place. But what I don't want is a sidewalk that is so close to my front windows that, I sneeze and the person who's walking by says Gesundheit. No, thank you very much. And so I just feel that you haven't done a very good job of talking to people before talking to the engineers to put this together. And the other thing, my question is, in terms of being ADA compliant, I have spent a lot of money on my house recently for an addition, and so that I could live there until they had to take me out in a pine box, which means I have ramps inside my home. I have a ramp going up to the front door. We may have an ADA compliant street, but I don't know how many of my colleagues could invite a person in a wheelchair to come over and have dinner with them. Probably not very many. Do we really need to be ADA compliant out on the street when the houses themselves you can't get into? Which I feel is a valid question. So please, I'm in favor, pave the street. We have potholes, we have problems. If you feel there needs to be new sewer or new water underneath it, that's entirely up to you as a taxpayer. I'd rather you didn't spend that money. I would like to go for the low-cost, no-fuss solution, which is just simply pave the street and let's call it quits. Thank you.
Tried an ambulance, by the way. You can throw me in speaker prison here for speaking out of turn. I did it on August 11th in an ambulance. And I died after that until I got to the hospital. And a girl's trying to put a stick in my arm. And there's a lot of ambulances on that street. And they're good, both the fire department and the hospital. It saved my life. But you can have the police escort me out or whatever because I spoke out of turn. But thank you.
Good? Okay. My name's Scott Beebe, and I'm here on behalf of my parents, Wayne and Carol, who live at 21 Cogan Avenue. On January 11th this year, my parents received a visit from Councilor Gibbs. First of all, let me express that I appreciate the attempt to get the knowledge from the residents. Maybe an informational packet to leave behind would have been a little bit better. They were unaware that there was a project in planning. So I get a phone call to come over and try to answer some of their questions for them, and they were left with 3 options. The first and foremost, my father and mother would prefer, as prayer speakers, fix the infrastructure, fix the drainage without any additional curbing or sidewalks. If left with only 3 options, if it's the only options they're left with, the most palatable of the 3 would be the suggestion of curbing markings in roadway with no sidewalks. The decision to put sidewalks, especially on the east side of the street, would affect anywhere from 14 to 30 homes. It would take out 20 to 25 trees, personal landscaping, 50% of all the driveways. So my parents, who are getting up in years, would lose right up to the back of where they currently park. 50% of their parking capabilities would go away. You install the sidewalks on your own because of your January meeting, I observed $40,000 of additional costs, and I believe that's probably low. It'll probably be a little bit more than that. Because you're gonna have unforeseen costs, underground wiring, MLD posts, and additional landscaping. So if you're going to go least economical, which is the curbing and parking on the roadways, I would suggest that. That would also help your budgetary plans. A lot of the other questions that we had tonight, you've already answered. The urgency. The current Complete Street Initiative, my research, I don't think applies here because the mandate only for state-funded projects. According to your records, this is a general funded project. And another question I had for the council, which is a little rhetorical. Right now, the roadway is 36 feet wide. That's equivalent to the New York State I-87. As the Ash to Green Book, allowing width for roadways, 28 to 32 feet is pliable. Is there any discussion or thought process on narrowing the roadway?
I just said that. That's the only thing I want.
Yeah. So I had that in there. I came prepared for that. So I would also encourage you to continue the education process to the residents. My parents had a hard time finding the meeting on January 9th. I had to go over there and actually put it on YouTube for them so they could watch it. With your visit without an informational packet caused some emotional response. My parents have lived in this property since November of 1986 and treated their front lawn as their own. Landscaping, Christmas decorations. They kept everything nice and neat, tidy. And for them to lose or have the prospect of losing 15 feet is unpalatable and emotional for them. And as you can tell, they're not the only ones emotional about this project. So I would encourage your discussion process, and I believe your thought process on the roadway markings only would be the best way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Reed, in the interest of time, how much time before we have to begin our 5:30 meeting?
Council begins in 2 minutes.
Okay, so council begins in 2 minutes.
Excuse me,
Okay.
you guys took so long on the other meeting ahead of this 5 o'clock meeting. Everybody has the right to speak. You should give them the right. You can't cut it off at 5:30 because you would start at 10 after 5.
There's additional
comments
time
on
for
the-
public comment in
Okay.
the meeting.
Sorry.
But when we say we have to begin our meetings at 5:30, because that's what's published, that's what our rules of order are, sir. So, if the mayor recognizes you, yes?
Hi, my name is Richard Cummins. I live at 72 Cogan. I just want to start out by saying that I was kind of a little ticked off that you consider this project 2/3 of the street. Our end of the street, from watching your meeting last time, the whole thing started out from wanting to connect that walkway from our end down to the other end. So there's nothing for me to believe that whatever you decide on this end isn't going to continue down to our end. So when you go around and talk to 30 people, 30 houses, I went last night and the night before, passed out things to 60 people, okay? And I talked to people on both sides, on all 3 sections, and I got various responses. Not once did I have anybody say that they wanted to get rid of the roadway parking. Most of the people in our area, if you look at Kennedy, Cogan, you look at Aaron, Sandra, everybody's family oriented. We have barbecues, we have pools, we have people coming over. I have 3 daughters, they have friends come over. The lack of parking is ridiculous. You can fit 2 cars in the driveway. My wife wants to have a pampered chef party. Now she can't do it from what you're proposing. We have family coming over. I'm supposed to tell 2 of my daughters they can come over because they can park in our driveway, but the other one has to park at the field house. It's a little ridiculous. I understand that safety is a big part of the street. That's what you're worried about with the sidewalks. If you're going to address safety, address the college kids going from one end of the street to the other at 50 miles an hour. The Domino's delivery people not stopping at the stop signs, driving through our thing like a bat out of hell. That's where your dangers are. You go over to Kennedy, again, Sandra, all the other streets next to us that aren't through a crossway, they're fine. People drive slow and nobody has an issue. So I get what you're saying. I understand people have concerns with taking some of their property, but a lot of people have concerns with the lack of parking and what are people gonna do. And I agree with some of the other comments, you need to talk to everybody on the street. Add another option, add a fourth option. Fix what needs to be fixed. We drive up and down a jigsaw puzzle every single day. It's been like that for years. Okay, so you can take care of that, you're gonna have happier people. You're gonna get everything fixed. Curbs or no curbs, I could care less. I want the street fixed. I don't care about walking. People walk in other streets, they don't have walking paths. They all get along fine. I don't understand why everybody, you're doing our road and targeting our road. I moved this to this location for a reason. I used to live on South Catherine that had a sidewalk and had busy traffic, and I didn't like it. I hated it. So I moved. I moved to an area that didn't have that, where we could have on-street parking and we could all get along. But apparently that's not the way now. So next time, I would appreciate not finding out on the morning news 2 days before I come here. Take a little time, go out and visit people, and I realize that you did do that, but the people that you didn't see, go back on Sunday, go back on Monday, talk to them. Don't take it for granted that everybody's gonna know, because I talked to a lot of people that are here tonight, and they had no idea about any of this. So, that's all I'm gonna say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have 2 minutes?
We'll actually be having more public comment period in about 15 minutes once we finish the business of the council. So let's begin the business of the council with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Reed,
Present.
Councilor Barbell,
Here.
Councilor Kelly,
Here.
Councilor Gibbs,
Here.
Councilor DeDominicis,
Here.
Councilor McFarland,
Here.
Councilor Moore,
Here.
I'll defer any comments in the interest of brevity tonight, and afford more time for public comment. Please proceed.
resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Common Council held on January 9th, 2020 are approved and placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office.
Moved by Councilor Barbell, seconded by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed.
Resolved that the payrolls of various departments of the city of Plattsburgh for the week ending January 15th, 2020 in the amount of $561,553.14 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby empowered and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Gibbs, seconded by Councilor Barbell. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. You have the regular reports in your packets. Let's ask for additional committee reports, beginning with government strategy and city operations. Councilor Barbell.
Nothing to report.
City infrastructure, Councilor Moore.
I didn't have anything new for this month, this week.
Well, do we want to update about, we did have a meeting. We want to talk.
Well, that would be a change, would be something, a new subject
Okay.
to be brought up, so.
Okay.
Because we've already resolved the initial issue.
Finance and budget, Councilor Kelly.
Well, we just had our meeting this afternoon, so there's not a lot to update. But I would like to mention to Councilor Barbell your suggestion of looking at OpenGov and having a few examples to work through together is a wonderful idea, and we'll work on that next week.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for bringing that up, Ira.
Public safety, Councilor Gibbs.
Yes, we did have a meeting last night, Councilor Barbell, myself, Mayor, and Chief Lawless. And we have anticipated that we're going to have meetings on basically a bi-weekly basis to continue to have conversations about various initiatives within both police, fire, and code enforcement. So last night's meeting was very productive, and it was informative, and we'll continue to have that dialogue.
Thank you. Plattsburgh Public Library, Councilor DeDominicis.
Nothing at this time, no.
MOD Board President, Councilor McFarland.
Nothing to report, except to remind everyone that our meeting is gonna be on the 30th of this month.
Resolved, the reports as listed are hereby ordered to receive. Many written reports are placed on file among the public records of the city clerk's office. Moved by Councilor Gibbs and seconded by Councilor Barbell. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. There's no correspondences of recommendations from boards at this time. Please continue.
Resolved that the bills audited by the common council for the week ending January 17th, 2020 in the amount of $912,113.71 are authorized and allowed, and the mayor and the city clerk are hereby authorized and directed to sign warrants drawn on the city chamberlain for the payment thereof.
Moved by Councilor Moore, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Now, tonight, there's two additional opportunities for public comment. This first opportunity for public comment is on items only on the agenda tonight, and then there'll be very shortly another public comment period to follow. Anybody like to please comment on items on the agenda tonight? There is an agenda available just outside the door. Seeing none, please continue.
Sylvia, I'd like to waive a reading on items number 7A and B and combine them and move to resolution.
Moved by Councilor McFarland, second by Councilor DeDominicis. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Discussion on the items themselves.
Are these, projects part of the DRI grants, or is it these
Yes.
separate grants?
They're part of the DGP, which is the downtown grant program, which
is funded out of the DRI, so it's
About-
DRI money.
it's about 10% of the DRI.
Yeah, it's the second portion of it.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilor Barbell,
Yes.
Councilor Kelly,
Yes.
Councilor Gibbs,
Yes.
Councilor DeDominicis,
Yes.
Councilor McFarland,
Yeah.
Councilor Moore,
Yes.
There's no trouble request this time. Are there any resolutions for initial consideration? Seeing none, any new business or additional council reports?
I would just say about the Cogan Avenue, I mean, I never heard of anything going on in Cogan Avenue or being planned for Cogan Avenue till last week, when our engineer came and said, we're looking at doing something on Cogan Avenue. Here's 3 options that the engineer has put forth. We can change some things, but let's start reaching out to people and doing it, so that's what we're doing. So I look forward to hearing more people speak about it.
So I just wanted to, because we can't engage with the audience back and forth, I just wanted to answer a couple of things that some people have said. So when we had a comprehensive view of the plan on last week's meeting, that's when I decided that I would go out and take the initiative to meet with people, and I dedicated a large chunk of my Saturday to do that. I work full-time. Everyone on the council knows I'm a full-time teacher. I did the best I could to get in contact with as many people as I could in the short amount of time that I have, and I had meetings for other committees. We had a meeting Monday, and then we had a meeting last night. So I just wanted for full understanding here. It's not that I'm not interested in continuing to go out into the neighborhood, but there's only so many hours in a day, and I did my absolute best to get the information out and left business cards behind. And as far as going down the entire length of Cogan, I'm one person. Did the best I could, so I'm glad to hear the feedback from people in my ward, though. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other new business or council reports? Seeing none, let's continue public comment, please.
Come right up.
My name is Phil Erickson. I've been 23 years on Cogan Ave. You got 57 at the other end. My wife has been there 40 years. I agree with you 100% on curbing and paving. However, the parking is a question. We can get 4 cars in our driveway, but occasionally, and not very often, we'll need to park on the street. At any rate, I agree with you on this. Now, the other thing is, occasionally, we do have speeders on that Cogan Avenue. In fact, about 3 or 4 months ago, a gentleman stopped at Dennis Avenue, heading toward Ruger Street. I don't know, he got miscombobulated or whatever. He actually hit a car right across the street from us, totaled it, rolled his Mercedes right in the middle of Cogan Avenue. I mean, it was almost unbelievable. But at any rate, he had to be going pretty fast from that. It's only about 100 feet from that stop sign. He said he stopped. I don't know. But at any rate, that's something that maybe just keep an eye on, because it is a straight-through street, and occasionally people really take off and they really speed on that street. But most people are respectful. That's all I have to say.
Sir, can I ask you to sign in, please?
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to address the council?
Good evening. Eric Lanzer. I live at 76 Cogan Avenue. We've been there 14 years and have enjoyed the neighborhood quite a bit. Very nice to live there. We have great neighbors, and I think the street as it is right now works very well. I would hate to see that change and compromise some of the flexibility and freedom that we have on the street right there. I'll point out that, you know, we've had many years to experience all that goes on, and one of the things that I think is kind of nice is that come graduation time, is that my end of Cogan Ave serves as pretty much overflow parking for all of the events going on over at the field house, and it seems to work very well. I haven't been privy to knowledge of any incidents out there by people parking on both sides of the street, all the graduates and their families walking around out there. It seems to work very well. I will just say that my end of the street is in fairly good shape, but the closer that you go to Cornelia, it deteriorates very quickly, and it's been in need of repair for a long time, and I think that needs to be addressed post-haste. But I would really hate to see, you know, any further changes aside from improving the condition of the roadway out there, because I really enjoy the sides of the street and the freedom that we have there. And I just hope you consider that in your decision making. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lanza.
Hello, I used to be professor at the State College, but now I'm retired. But I've lived on Cogan Avenue at 60 Cogan Avenue for about 30 years now. I'm very happy with, and I'm down at 60 Cogan, which is near the field house. I'm very happy with the situation on the street. The only problem I find is that motorbikes and some cars are traveling very fast on that street, and that bothers me, especially if there's any children. But luckily, our end of the street, I don't think have any children anymore. Most of them are retired or older people. But what I'd like to suggest is that really nothing needs to be done except cleaning up the pavement on the end of Cogan that's closer to Cornelia. That certainly should be done. And maybe some speed bumps should be put in to slow people down on the other end of the street. That's one of the big problems, I think. But other than that, I'm very happy with this place, and I'm glad that you're considering doing something about the street. Okay.
Sir, can we get you to sign in, please? Thank you.
Hello, I'm Tom Voish, 28 Cogan Avenue. I've lived there for about 35 years now. Personally, I like the area the way it is. I have to admit that. I'm sorry I wasn't around when you came by Saturday. I was out of town. I didn't know what the sewer project was, so I didn't respond to it. Personally, I would like to thank whoever the anonymous person was who went door to door over 2 days, putting flyers in our mailbox telling us about this. So, thank you. But again, you know, I personally think that, well, for one thing, we talk about people walking. I've spent the last few years walking back and forth to Plattsburgh State as a college professor, and let me put it this way, I was never leading a parade. It's usually pretty much just me walking down the street. And I've never faced any problems, even with cars parked on the side of the road. I mean, if there's somebody coming down the street, you go around the right side of the car, you go on somebody's grass. Nobody comes out and shoots you. So basically, there's plenty of room there. As far as people speeding and whatnot, I find these things kind of interesting because there was a problem years ago on Kennedy, with speeders, and all of a sudden, there was a traffic island put in on Kennedy. And that apparently served to slow people down. So there are options other than, tearing up the street and putting in sidewalks. Personally, I don't even know how putting in sidewalks would make a difference as far as people speeding down Cogan Avenue is concerned. So I don't think that's particularly a matter of concern. Another thing, I mean, I realize the ADA stuff is something that is tough to work around, but I find it fascinating that when people have complained for years about the intersection down at Broad and Beekman, that there should be a turn light over there, we get told, oh, there have been studies done and there's not enough need for it. Has there ever been a study done as far as the number of pedestrians on Cogan or any of the other streets? I mean, realistically, I live there, and if I see one person a day go by who's not walking a dog, that's a lot. So realistically, again, there's lots of things that should be looked at, and you're dealing with a really lovely neighborhood, and I would hate to see you wreck it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Paul Heller, 51 Cogan Avenue. I didn't intend to speak, but I just want to say that we've been there 25 years, and the only suggestion I can see for improvement, besides the sewer business, is a pole that is for people to cross there, and it makes that right-hand turn for anyone who's ever taken a turn onto from Route 3 onto Cogan. It's like a 90-degree turn, and it's very difficult, and there's always cars coming, and I think you need to take a look at moving that. Otherwise, as far as parking and what else is being considered besides the parking issue? Sidewalks. All I can say about those things, if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it.
Good evening. My name is Bill Rook. I actually don't live on Cogan. I live on Ruger, but I'm at the corner. If you put in sidewalks, I suddenly acquire 160 more feet of sidewalk to go with 100 that I already take care of. That doesn't go over real big. I understand. I walk all over the area all summer long. I certainly appreciate sidewalks. I also appreciate the problem is that people are saying having a sidewalk next to their living room window. I wouldn't like that. Yes, we sure have a pothole problem. I've told a couple of car dealers if they want to test their suspension, Cogan's a good place to try it out. And that certainly needs to be repaired, and I certainly also believe that what's under the street has to be taken care of. But I question, while I would like personally to see sidewalks, I question that there is room for them or that it's feasible. Parking is a disaster if you take away parking spots that are down there now. I certainly hope that you take a long, careful look at this and consider it from a point of view of somebody who has to live there. That's about all I've got to say, but thank you.
My name's Chris LaRose. I live at 27 Cogan Avenue. I'm one of the homes in the immediate affected area. Like Councilor Gibbs, I am a teacher as well. The one thing that I'm asking, and I appreciate your recommendation that we go with option one, which I consider to be the least intrusive onto our property, is see if this council can somehow get creative enough to keep it that way, but also try to incorporate parking on the street. My fellow neighbor brought up the idea of Halloween. We must have at least 200 vehicles that park on that street that evening, and we've never had an issue. If we now go with a curbing situation and no one is allowed to park there, I can't even imagine the kind of chaos it could create in the West End. One of the reasons my wife and I and my family moved into the West End 28 years ago was the lack of sidewalks, the ability to work on our landscaping if any was done, any damage was done during the wintertime. and the aesthetics and the safety have never been an issue. So I'm just asking to follow Councilor Gibbs' recommendation of some kind of option one. Do not take away any additional property space. Do not incorporate sidewalks, but try to get creative and incorporate some kind of parking on both the east and the west side of Cogan Avenue, so it's fair to everybody, whether you're talking from Route 3 down to that first stop sign where we are immediately being affected, and then for the rest of all of my neighbors on Cogan Avenue down to Ruger Street. Thank you very much.
Would anyone else
Any other
like to-
individuals like to please come forward on any issue of mutual concern? This is open public forum.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to say, you were saying something that was very good. I'm sorry, I heard it a little bit before, but you gotta think of value. The way your houses are in Cogan Ave, West End was always the more, I mean, there was years ago when downtown Plattsburgh had the most beautiful homes, big mansions. Now they're all subbed out to apartments and run down. Cogan is a very respectable place to be. It's West End, it's quiet. And the value, I feel strongly the value of the homes up there is going to be decreased when you guys do this, especially with the sidewalks. You're literally looking at a spot, and I can tell you, it's about from here to that door that I'm gonna be away from the sidewalk. Now, I don't know about you guys, I was a country boy my whole life, until 1987 when I moved in with my wife. But that is not gonna be what we want over in the West End. Your property values are going to go down, or at least they should. And that's gonna affect everybody. But I realize that we want to do something that is going to be better for the value of the properties, the city, and the person that lives there. All three of the things have to be met. But I'm in favor of the curbings because that was the most least of intrusive. But I'm also in favor of the parking as well. Because when you do have events, how can you have your family come to your house and say you got to park way down in the parking lot by the church or the park and walk up? I don't know about you, but I'm middle age in my family, and my mother can't walk that far. My brothers can't walk that far. So what do we don't have parties at 39 Cogan Avenue anymore? Or do we isolate? Maybe I do a drawing on something where I do a raffle, see who can park in the driveway. I mean, you're taking away from things like even boats, campers, anything that people have. You stick a camper on our road, you're done. You know, your driveway, you know where to park. You gotta realize that you can't just take away parking on the street. That's really not an option. You gotta have some parking for the street. And like I said before, I'll say it again, nobody's gotten hurt on there, not that God forbid anything would happen to anybody now, but it's worked. And if it's worked for the 30-something years we've been there, it should work in the future. That's all I have to say.
Any other individuals like to please come forward on any issue of mutual concern?
Hi, my name is Rich Cummins again. I just want to say one more thing. Listening to everybody here tonight has been beneficial on everybody's sake, I'm sure. Ms. Gibbs, I know that you mentioned earlier that you talked to a bunch of people, and from, I think it was 10 people you said all agreed with your point of view of that option one was number one, and that would be the best option. But from what I've heard tonight, nobody thinks that other than one person, and that person actually said that they don't agree with the parking part of it. That's a huge issue for everybody here tonight. I think that you should all reconsider this. Talk to everybody on our street, once again, add a fourth option, which seems to be something that we've heard quite a bit lately. And that fourth option would be fix the street. Fix the street and keep it the way it is. Just make it nice. That's all we ask. That's what we want. That's what we pay taxes for, and that's what we expect. We don't expect a bunch of change. We like what we have. We just want it fixed up nice. Thank you.
Any other individuals like to please come forward on any issue of mutual concern? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Moore. Roll call.
Counselor Marvell?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor DeDominicis?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
Yes.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Thank you all for coming out tonight.
You signed a book, I was just saying, it's been time and
Ethan, you turn the recording off?
Thank you for doing that. I usually sign them because I sit next to my phone.
Option one didn't change anything.
Yeah, it takes away parking.